Hello, I'm James. The last month, I've managed to accomplish three books: one nonfiction, two fictional books, and two graphic novels. So, overall, five pieces of literature. I'm going to rate those books from 1 to 5 based on my impression, where 1 is the worst book I ever read, and the 5 is a masterpiece. So, without further ado, let's start. The first book is The Official TED Guide to Public Speaking. I highly recommend the book to anyone who's searching for a clear follow-along guide on how to give a presentation or literally any kind of public speech. In my personal opinion, if you are anyhow connected to given public speeches, this is a must read, because this book has clear instructions on what to do to prepare for your speech, what to do while giving a speech, and even some tips what you should do after giving the speech. Without any exaggeration, this book has a clear guide on each and every step that you need to consider to give a perfect public speech. I give this book 4 out of 5 only because I'm not really fond of nonfiction literature. I just don't like the genre. Otherwise, I would have given it 5 stars because it's a really great book on public speaking. Let's move on to the next book on my list read in May, and this is The Tramps of Doom by Roger Zelazny. This book is the sixth book in a big cycle of Chronicles of Amber, and the first book in the second part of this cycle. If you're not familiar to Chronicles of Amber, they have two parts of the cycle. The first 5 books are books of Corwin, and the second 5 books are books of Merlin. So this Tramps of Doom is the first of books of Merlin. To give you a hint of the plot, what's going on in the book, we have Merlin. He is a sorcerer, and somebody's trying to kill him the third year in a row on his birthday. He doesn't know this person, he doesn't know why it's going on, but he tries to figure out, and the complications that he has on his past is that he is on Earth, where officially there is no magic and no magical creatures, but he has some secret identity that he didn't tell anyone on the Earth. And things got a little bit messy. I guess that's all that I can say without spoiling the plot. I'd like to take a note on the previous 5 books that I read. I read them at the beginning of the year, I guess, or at the end of the previous one, not sure. They are 5 out of 5. Literally, great classical fantasy cycle. The books kept me on the edge from the very first pages of the narrative till the very last page of the 5th book. But I cannot say that about this first book in the second part of the cycle. And here's why. I've noticed that the author repeats himself a bit. So the plot is different. Corwin, no spoilers, the Corwin, he was the master of the sword. So we had really great sword fights related to some kind of magic, obviously, because it's a fantasy cycle. Even though the main part was a fight on the sword, Merlin is a different kind of character. He is a sorcerer, mostly. He acquainted both skills. He has magic skills, he can fight on a sword, but even though the magic is the main moving power in that series. The great book for anyone who's looking for some very fast-paced plot without much descriptions of the world, I would say. Fight after fight, intrigue after intrigue, very developed magical world. But I've heard some people say that if you are much into modern fantasy, then you might find this boring, since this book is some classical cycle that was written in, if I'm not mistaken, in 80s or even 70s. It's pretty old, and fantasy literature as a fiction was not as developed to the modern standards. And what I did not like about this book is that it repeats the first book of the cycle. Not literally, but the main parts of the plot, I see that they are very the same with the first book. And that's why it was still gripping, it was still intriguing to read, because uh, let's say, decorations are different, and the mystery behind all the actions is very different. Different characters, different time, and so on. But the main points of the plot are pretty much the same. And that is why I gave this book 4 out of 5. It might have been a masterpiece if the writer considered to take some different pivotal moments in the books. I would be happy. But anyways, I have 4 books to read in the cycle of further, so maybe I'll be pretty satisfied now. And maybe I will give this cycle, the second part of the cycle, 5 out of 5 eventually. The last book that I read this month was A Bear Called Paddington by Michael Bond. Yes, it is kids' literature. However, it was quite enjoyable to read because as an adult, I've noticed much more jokes that the author meant while he was writing the story, and it is hilarious to observe those clumsy and pretty naive stories about a bear who appeared in London on Paddington Station, and the family adopted him. If you're not familiar with the plot, the story that he got into were hilarious and some kind of comforting. Obviously, the book was written for kids, but I believe that the author meant adults to read it too, because it's utterly hilarious, and because some jokes in the book that I believe children are not able to comprehend. It is something regular for them, and not so obvious that it is supposed to be funny. So again, the narration of the book is really amusing and soothing in some way. It is like a comfortable reading. I highly recommend. I'll give this book decent 4. I'm sorry I don't have 5-star books this month. It just didn't happen. So the last but not least are 2 graphical novels, or maybe it is more appropriate to say comic books. Those are stories about Batman. I got into DC universe a bit, and I was looking for where to start reading comics, so I wouldn't have to reread all the old stuff from the previous century to get the plot. And I found out that they had a rebirth of the universe. It's called New 52. I don't know why, but anyways, they started all the issues, all the titles from the number 1, and the story began again. So I grabbed first 2 volumes of Batman's story. Those books are called The Court of Owls and The City of Owls. It is one story divided into 2 parts, and I really enjoyed. Again, those are great comic book. I enjoyed the plot much. It has a great mystery. It has great graphical content, and the plot is pretty gripping. So there is a legend in the city that there is a court of owls, a secret society that watches the city all the time in secret, and they have a killer whose name is the Talon, and nobody actually believes that there is such a secret society in the city because it's like an old legend that came into some child lullaby that people sing every now and then. At a point, it appeared that some people got murdered by some professional, and no one knows who he is. And here is the story began. It's a great mystery, lots of action, lots of detective elements in the plot, and I enjoyed it much. I probably will continue reading them further. Again, I said previously that I don't have 5-star books this month, but This is a solid 4 again. This is a really great comic book. If you are into superheroes, you like some action comic, or you'd like to try comic books at first, I think it's a great choice. So that's all that I read this month, and I'm pretty happy that I could share it with you. Please share in the comments what was your favorite book of the month. What have you read? I'll be pretty much interested to read. Subscribe to this channel if you'd like to see more updates on my reading journey. And see you next time. Bye.